What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to discuss a stock we can no longer call a penny stock in the form of HighTide, formerly ticker symbol HITIF, now known as HITID. So today we're going to give an update on the reverse stock split. We'll see how their overall share performance is doing over the last few weeks, and also check in on my own current holding within this position. We'll give an update on all the further catalysts that we discussed in prior videos on this stock. And finally, we'll give an update on my plans going forward for HITID. And with all that being said, let's dive right on into today's video. Firstly, it was a fairly eventful week for HighTide or HITID because there was a reverse stock split or share consolidation for 15 to 1. So basically, for every 15 shares you had for HighTide, which was trading at about 50 cents a share at a time, that got kind of divided up and you have less shares. So if you had 15 shares, you now have one as such, kind of in layman's terms. So again, a lot of people had a lot of different questions, and quite surprisingly, a lot of people were fairly annoyed with this share consolidation as well. So in kind of brief, very simplistic summary, if you had $15 invested at the time in HighTide, and let's say it was trading at about 50 cents a share at the time, you would have had about 30 shares. But all this means now, this share consolidation or reverse split, is basically that it's got divided down to have less shares or shares outstanding. Again, this is due to getting onto the Nasdaq, and it's one of the requirements to have a higher share price. We'll discuss that later on in more detail. But again, all this means is literally now you have two shares, but your investment amount hasn't actually changed, because let's say now they're worth, let's say $7.50 a share at the time. So your overall investment is still $15, it just shows at less shares. Now, I also know that people have a lot of questions in terms of the rights issue and how this will affect the rights issue, the share consolidation. So this is quite complex, so I will actually make a different video on this in the coming days, so I'll be sure to let you know on that. Another thing you might have noticed as well on your brokerage is that it has changed ticker from HITIF to HITID. Now again, this is just due to the share consolidation. It doesn't really impact anything else as such. So some people, especially people in the US, definitely seem to be having issues with their brokerage and actually seeing this new ticker or even their shares. A lot of people are saying, again, mainly within the US, that they have sold out their HITIF position, the broker has, but they haven't seen their actual new HITID position yet. So in that circumstance, I definitely would kind of recommend contacting your broker for more updates on this. So HighTide is one of my 33 holdings at the moment, and since this share consolidation, the share price has done fairly well over the last week or so. It's gone up about 16% on the 1 week chart. We can see here the dotted line is my average price now. Now obviously, when I bought into this stock originally, I was buying as a penny stock, but again, due to this share consolidation, it is now worth over $8.80. This again hasn't impacted my overall investment. I still had the exact same amount invested, so that doesn't mean, let's say if it was worth 50 cents, that I'm automatically getting 15 times more money. It's pretty much the exact same. However, the stock performance has improved by 16% since this share consolidation. So currently it's trading at $8.80 a share. Now a lot of people were worried, and probably for right reasons as well, is that after this share consolidation they were worried about getting kind of shorted out and for the stock to plummet back down. But thankfully, since the stock split, it's went up about 16%. So as it now stands, I have about 35.5 shares or just under that invested in HighTide. Again, this was a few hundred before the consolidation. We currently have about €253 invested, are down 2% or about just €5. And again, that's mainly due to FX impact. Again, my stock was down about 15 or 16% before this consolidation. So obviously over the last week, it's went up 16% as we already stated. So thankfully, we've kind of come out the better side of this share consolidation. Now, it's not all about the share consolidation either. I have about 15 points noted over the last few weeks or even months on this stock that I've taken note in terms of catalysts and kind of, for example, fundamentals as well. They have very strong fundamentals. Now, I've went through all of these in prior videos, but the kind of highlighted 6 or 7 points here, I'll kind of just give a very brief update on those, and the ones that aren't highlighted is mainly because there hasn't been any further updates. So the first 2 highlighted points here, the product offerings / diversification and ever expanding, that is still holding strong here. You can see in prior videos as well that they're continually adding in new stores through mergers and acquisitions. Again, we'll discuss that point a bit later on. But again, you can't really fault HighTide on this front. Again, as I said in many prior videos, if you type in HighTide, it's very, very difficult to find any negative news on this stock. And it seems to be doing everything right at the moment. Now again, that could all change at the click of a hat, mainly because they're kind of just getting into the expansion stage now, so things could go wrong as well as they could go even better. But again, you need to do your own due diligence before investing any of your hard-earned capital. But saying that, at the moment, their expansion, or they're aggressively expanding, that is, across Canada. And again, we'll discuss later on the US presence. So again, you can't really fault them here. And for me, these are huge catalysts going forward. Now the next 2 points, firstly, they had huge potential at current prices. Now I wrote this point when they were trading at about 50 cents a share. Now although nothing has actually changed in terms of share price, obviously it's now $8, but if you had shares, again it just got divided by 15, you still had the same amount invested. But this point now I would be a small bit wary of at the moment, and we discuss this in a bit more detail later on in terms of my plans going forward for the stock. Now because it's trading at over $8 a share at the moment, there is a chance that it could drop down a little bit. So I wouldn't be jumping in right now to buy a whole lot more shares. If I was you and if you hadn't already invested in the stock, I kind of just see where it goes and give it a few weeks or so to consolidate and just to kind of go back to parity or fair value, as the hype around the stock at the moment might be driving up the price slightly. So again, this point was when it was trading at 50 cents a share. But again, we'll discuss this in a small bit more detail at the end of the video when I discuss my plans going forward for this stock. Another huge catalyst was their filing for the Nasdaq, which is still in process. They're still filing a lot of you need to jump through a lot of hoops as expected to get onto the Nasdaq. It's not an easy feat at all. And you can see here by the share consolidation that we mentioned at the start of this video, that was one of the main requirements to get onto the Nasdaq, to have a certain share price or shares outstanding. So they're definitely going in the right direction, and certainly in the next few weeks, possibly even a month or two, we'll have a big update on this Nasdaq news. The next 2 highlighted points were the mergers and acquisitions and increased US presence. Now at the very start of looking into this stock many weeks and months ago at this stage, I said one of the very few kind of things I could find that they needed to improve was their expansion outside of Canada, and they're certainly doing that as well. And another point that I mentioned was that they needed to improve their e-commerce side of things. Again, they have done this very successfully through mergers and acquisitions. They've now already acquired Fab Nutrition over the last week or two. So again, they're within the US, so that ticks that first box. And second of all, they have a very good online e-commerce system. Again, that ticks the second box. And it's not just the Fab Nutrition that they've after acquiring, it's many others such as Cannabis or Growth that have really good e-commerce platforms. So definitely HighTide are doing very good business in this front. And the final highlighted point here is the share consolidation that we discussed at the start of this video. Now personally, I'm kind of on the fence about the share consolidation. Obviously, it's gone up 16% since it happened, so in the short term, it's very promising. And also in the long term, it can have very big positive effects in terms of catalysts, such as the Nasdaq, because that had to happen for them to get onto the Nasdaq. But again, I'd be quite wary over the next few weeks, or even, probably next few weeks, in terms of people shorting this stock. So again, we'll just have a brief discussion now in terms of my plans going forward for HighTide. So as stated earlier, I currently have about 35.5 shares of HighTide. We're down about 2%, and mainly that's due to FX impact. We're actually in the green over the last week. It's up 16%. Now going forward, I'm going to be quite cautious of this stock, mainly due to this massive difference in shares outstanding, etc. Again, the 15-to-1 split comes to mind. So again, it's trading currently at $8.80 or so a share. So what I'm going to do here is, because I have 33 holdings overall in my portfolio, I'll probably focus on the others that are currently in the red, such as the iShares Global Clean Edge ETF, which I made a video on not so long ago in the description below. So again, I'll probably just leave HighTide, even if it drops in value, or even if it goes up in value over the next week or so, I'll just leave as is for now, and kind of reassess in a week or two once the dust settles, so to speak, on this share consolidation, and then kind of go from there. One thing I certainly won't be doing anyway is selling this stock. I'll be holding this long term, as I've said throughout the last few months on my videos. So again, even when it was down about 16 or 70% a few weeks, or even last week, I said again I would never sell this stock. Well, never say never, I guess, but in terms of short term, I won't be selling this stock. And if anything, I'll be buying more, but I'll just leave the dust settle as stated, because probably sometimes the best investments you make are the ones you don't make at all. So again, it's all about patience and consistency in long-term investing. So again, I will definitely be buying more HighTide in the not so distant future, maybe in the next few weeks. But again, just for now, I'm going to leave it a week or two to see where the price goes. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I just wanted to thanks very much if you made it this far, and always thanks so much for the support. Nearly at 1,400 subscribers, which is insane. In my opinion, I never thought this channel would get anywhere near that. So thanks very much for all the continued support. I'd also be very interested to know in the comment section below, firstly, if you hold HighTide and how many shares you have within this stock. And secondly, I'd actually be interested to know your thoughts and opinions on the share consolidation and if you think it's going to be positive or negative for this company going forward. Thanks very much, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you all in tomorrow's video.